So I decided to make an out-of-this-world video for you. A video about... Knives in Space! And I am your host, JJ Jinx! We'll begin with the Camillus Mill K, shown here, open. Now this model was actually a demo, and Alan Shepard himself carried it in May of 1961 aboard the Mercury Redstone 3 rocket in the Freedom 7 capsule. Alan Shepard was the first American in space, and he eventually got to walk on the moon on Apollo 14 in 1971. Brave guy to get onto Apollo 14, am I right? And after he got there, he hit 2 golf balls on the lunar surface. The knife includes a bottle opener, can opener, awl, and a drop point blade, along with that characteristic veil. Here's a view of the actual knife that is located in the Smithsonian Museum. Now, if you find yourself one of these stamped Camillus 1959, hold on to it. That's the same model that Alan Shepard took into space. Probably the most well-known is the Randall Knives Model 17 Astro. Here it is shown opened up. There's a little tool at the end of that rope there that has basically a flathead screwdriver, and when you take the scales off, it reveals a cavity inside where survival stuff was stored. The design of this knife was heavily influenced by astronaut Gordon Cooper, and Randall himself donated 9 of these knives to some of the first Mercury astronauts. Well, NASA must have liked them, because they ordered 35 more, paying $12.33 a piece of your taxpayer dollars. So, yeah, it was used in Project Mercury in the Faith 7 capsules, which was kind of later on in the Mercury program. It was made with prying in mind. They wanted a tool that could pry open hatches if the need arose, and you can get one today for a little over $600. In 1961, one of these knives made it 118 miles above the Earth, and it traveled 5,200 miles per hour. It experienced 11 G's of gravity, and then, after the splashdown, it spent 38 years, 16,000 feet, beneath the ocean's surface. But in 1999, it was recovered. They pulled the capsule up, and they found the knife. A little worse for wear, but hey, you can see they did a little bit of an upgrade. Instead of that leather strap with the screw tool, they've got it on this kind of old school phone cord type of thing. So, that's what 30 years in the drink looks like. In the later Gemini and Apollo missions, astronauts had entire survival kits with them, fitted with all kinds of cool junk. Included was the Wrks Sons Model M1, which was more of a machete than a knife. It had a very lightweight plastic handle, space-age material for its time. It was actually selected by NASA because it off-gassed nothing. You know, no plasticizers, no industrial solvents. They don't want any of that stuff in their capsules' atmospheres, you know? The back of the blade had a sawtooth on it, and it was intended for use in jungle environments. It was also made for prying hatches in mind as well, and it had a really cool-looking aluminum sheath. Now, at this point, NASA was getting very serious about what they put on these things, so they took the M1 to Panama and just wrecked the hell out of it, testing every possible scenario, trying to make sure it would actually work as intended. And finally, in March of 1965, it flew up on a Gemini mission. And on an Apollo mission, it actually went to the moon and came back. Well, sort of. It was actually on the command capsule, which orbited the moon while the astronauts went down to walk around and play golf on it. But I still think that should count. but they are still in production. You can get one today for $275. In 1978, NASA placed an order for 50 Master Craftsman knives with Victorinox. Now these were the plain scaled versions of the knife, but then when it started to get used on Skylab and space shuttle missions, Victorinox renamed it the Astronaut and started putting on images of astronauts and space shuttles. There was a couple of very minor variations in the model details. You know, the original ones had the bail, the later ones had the keychain ring, but otherwise they're almost the same. So this was a product that was not designed for space, but NASA loved the idea because it was just a whole bunch of tools in one pocket-sized kit. So you didn't have tools just floating around your capsule. That can be very dangerous. A version of this knife was on board every single space shuttle mission. Since they were discontinued in 1991, if you could find one, they are highly collectible. And they actually got some use. In 1995, astronaut Chris Hadfield had to use one to help pry open a door at the Mir space station because the Russians were a little aggressive in closing the hatch. Here's what Hadfield wrote in his book. So we did the true space age thing. We broke into Mir using a Swiss Army knife. Never leave the planet without one.
Refer to utility implement number 469er.
The Swiss Army knife.
Affirmative.
The original Swiss Army knife from Victorinox is aboard every space shuttle mission. Because you never know when you'll need one next.
In 1999, Emerson Knives was contacted by NASA to make a knife for astronauts in the space station program. Emerson got to work right away, and several designs were considered and built. But after a long debate, a decision was reached that the design already existed. The Spec War. It fit all the requirements: size, weight, strength, ergonomics, materials. The only change was on the front of the Tanto-style blade, there was an addition of a notch, which was used as kind of a gut hook, except it was for like food packaging and stuff like that. Now the Spec War was used on Mir in the post-Soyuz years. This was when Russia and the United States started working together after 2001. So it was used by both cosmonauts and American astronauts. Now that version with the special notch, only 30 of them were ever produced, and they were never put up for sale to civilians. So the only people who have them now are the actual astronauts and cosmonauts who just kind of held on to them. Here's a video of a cosmonaut slicing salami in space.
Резать там гиперную ленту. Шеф, и можно резать гораздо более классные эти самые продукты. По этому поводу я ее съем с кожурой.
And this brings me to the honorable mentions section of this video. First up is the Camillus MC1, popularly known as the paratrooper knife. It's kind of an early switchblade, bright orange, has a hook tool for cutting cord, and it was actually carried by one of the Gemini 12 astronauts. We're not really sure which one. It was either Jim Lovell or Buzz Aldrin, and it spent 4 days in space. Now the reason why this lands on the honorable mentions list is because, at the time, survival kits on board capsules were not standard issue. They were just kind of thrown together by the astronauts themselves sometimes. So, never standard issue, but it did go up into space one time on Gemini 12. I also put on the honorable mentions the TP-82 Cosmonaut Survival Machete. Not because it's Russian, but because it's like half machete. This tool was actually the stock to a Russian space gun. And I'm not joking. Here's a picture of it. You can see it underneath the handle of the gun as the shoulder stock. So the shoulder stock doubled as the machete. Now this was created after the cosmonaut Alexei Leonov was stranded in Siberia for a while, out in the wilderness, because his capsule malfunctioned. And he was like, you know what? We need some kind of kit here. This could have ended badly. And the Russians came up with this thing. It is a triple-barreled gun. The top two barrels were actually used for 40-gauge shotgun shells. And that lower single barrel, kind of in the middle, fired 5.45 by 39 millimeter ammunition, which was developed for the AK-74. So the TP-82 was half gun, half machete. So I put it on the honorable mentions. Another knife I think deserves a place on the honorable mentions list is this NASA-themed Delica 4, half serrated, made by Spyderco. Now this is not an official NASA knife, but it looks like it should be. This was designed by an artist named Tom Sachs. I don't really know much about his work, but he apparently is really into space technology and space exploration, and so makes a lot of space-themed pieces in his art. That would be so cool if NASA issued these to astronauts. That would be great. Now this one's a bit of a weird one. In 2014, an astronaut doing work on the International Space Station had their toolbox open, seen in this image, and there's a knife in it. And nobody knows what the hell it is, or how it got there. So it has been affectionately referred to as the Cutter. And I mean, it's real. There was a video feed showing it in the toolbox, but it's a bit too blurry to kind of make out a make and model or anything like that. But I thought that was really interesting. What is it? Who brought it up there? Don't know. In August of 2018, astronauts on board the International Space Station woke up and were informed that their space station had a hole in it. A micrometeorite had struck the MS-09 Soyuz module, and they had to figure that out by shutting up all the hatchways between the modules and figuring out which one was leaking. The MS-09 module was occasionally used as a badminton court. So obviously the damage had to be repaired. When they finally located the hole was finally discovered by Alexander Gerst of the European Space Agency, who plugged it with his finger, while a Russian cosmonaut went on the outside to investigate the exterior damage. That meant that the insulation, radiation shielding, and all that other stuff had to be cut through in order to have a look at the hole. This is an image of the knife that the cosmonaut was using, but I actually don't know very much about this thing. Obviously, it's a modern knife, and I don't know why. It's just hard to find information about this thing. I would love to know more. So, I'm going to close this video with some footage of that cosmonaut actually using this knife to rip open the International Space Station. What a fitting end. Now, I'm sure that there are a ton of models that I must have missed, or I got wrong information on, or there's more information that I don't know. If you know anything, please leave a comment. I love learning about this stuff. And if you had to bring a knife up into outer space, which model would you take with you? I will leave you with that thought.
This is Mission Control Houston at the 4-hour, 10-minute mark in the EVA. You can see from Oleg Kononenko's helmet camera that area where he used a knife to initiate an incision into the thermal insulation, underneath which is a micrometeoroid orbital debris shield. He, however, has not had much luck getting the correct leverage with his feet in a foot restraint at the end of the Strela boom to be able to utilize a different set of cutters, so he's now back to the knife itself.
Alex, be careful. Don't be so harsh on that. I understand that it is hard for you, but please try to be calm. You know, there is something black visible here. And another layer, maybe? In the card, there is another layer, so I have to go a little bit deeper. Yes, there are two layers. One of them hardened, and the other is not so hard. Okay, so what about this metal, you know, thing? Should I throw it away because it's beneath my knife blade right now?
This, by the way, is deja vu to a certain extent from July 10th, 2008, when Kononenko and Sergei Volkov used cutting tools and knives to cut away insulation over pyrotechnic bolts, separation mechanisms for module separation that they inspected on their Soyuz TMA-12 spacecraft.